Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Insider podcast number 64 with me, Georgi. In today's podcast, I had the pleasure to talk with Giulia De Mauro. Giulia is an educated architect at the University of Nottingham, and after several experiences in the field of education and architecture at companies such as MVRDV, the Powerhouse Company, and Hector Hochstadt, where she was in charge actually of the international business development, Giulia discovered her passion, which was exactly this within the architectural world. So developing business on international level, and she got the courage to found her own company, the IBD company, which means International Business Development Company, with which she helps architectural startups and architectural companies to grow their business internationally, or really to gather new clients and new markets. So in the following conversation, we have discovered what was her background, how did she get the skills she currently uses to help architectural offices, and what are those simple things that you can do to join a new market and to find new clients. So I hope you're going to enjoy the conversation. But before we start the conversation, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. And I want to remind you that if you like what we do, you can help us by supporting us for free, which means by just subscribing our podcast, sharing with your friends, following our social media channels, which are the Creative Insider page on LinkedIn and at TCI Podcast on Instagram. You'll find the links below. And also, if you really feel like that our work is helping you somehow, or getting you inspired, or getting you on track to following your dreams through the conversation we have with our guests, you can support us on Patreon. So the Creative Insider is also on Patreon, where you can donate a little sum of money each month. Starting $5, but you can go below that if you cannot afford $5. And feel free to support us. And soon we'll be releasing also some perks for all our patrons. Consider supporting us. And thank you very much for the time and the support so far. And I don't want to introduce anything else more for this podcast. I want to just wish you a pleasant listening with the conversation with our guest, Giulia De Mauro.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hello, Giulia. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Georgi?
I'm doing great too. Thank you. You might not know that, but I've lived my whole life in Italy, and I have an Italian passport too.
Oh, wow.
So I have still a little bit hangover from the last 2 days of celebration, because we are recording this slightly after the Euros. So it's been a rough start in the week. Did you celebrate too? You're currently in Italy too, I know.
Yeah, we celebrated quite a lot here, but it was great to see it, to watch it in Italy and be with the family to watch it. So I think that is the special part of the celebration for me.
Yes, I think that must have been awesome. And you anticipated a little bit something of your background. Your background seems very impressive because you don't have the typical Italian accent when you speak English. And you can introduce a little bit yourself and tell a little bit of your international, so to say, start in life.
Sure. So my parents are Italian. They're from Rome originally. So all my grandparents, uncles, cousins, everyone is in Rome. But I was born in Pau, which is in the south of France. And I basically grew up between Italy, France, and Gabon in Africa. So, you know, uh, I have seen different cultures throughout my childhood. I do have the Italian passport, like you, but I'm a bit of a mix of everything. And then when I was 18, I moved to the UK to study architecture. And after that, I moved to the Netherlands, where I am now living. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a well background, and that sounded to me very interesting. I got to know you from the Clubhouse room of Oliver Thomas and the other guys. And I don't have an iPhone, so I don't participate actively on Clubhouse. But I think it's quite interesting, the people that are inviting over, and I might be considering buying an iPhone to participate more. Um,
Yeah, you should. It's a
and what
great
was
platform.
Yeah, yeah. And what was interesting to me was that you, as you said, you're an educated architect, but you moved to another field, the field of business development, in particular international business development.
Hmm.
Um, but let's go like through your past and how you got to there. So you said you studied in architecture in England, in the UK, or in the UK,
Yes.
I don't know if England.
Yeah.
Where was the moment in your life, in this crazy like first part of your life where you were so international, that you decided, I want to try to be something creative, I want to be an architect, I want to be a designer?
So I've always been uh creative, but also a little bit scientific, right? Like I was in between the creative and artistic side and the more math and scientific side of things. And when I was 18, I was not sure what I wanted to do. You know, I think everyone was a bit confused, you know, when you have to decide, where do I have to go and what do I have to study. And I only knew that I wanted to go to the UK. And I picked architecture because it seemed like a degree and a master where you could apply many skills. And you know, of course, where it's quite you're quite a generalist, let's say. So I thought that it could be a good fit for me, and then I could always decide what to do next, right? So that's what attracted me to it. I studied in Nottingham University for my bachelor and my master's. I did my year out in London, in a London practice. And then after I graduated from my master, I straight away got invited to be a lecturer for Manchester University because I just love to teach. I found out that I had this love to teach people and to help people to become better architects and designers. Yeah.
What did you teach at that university? What was your specialty?
So at the time, I was specialized through Nottingham University as a tall building designer, so skyscraper design. And in Manchester University, I was teaching digital design, so all tools such as BIM or Rhino and all kind of computer skills to allow students to not waste too much time on making plans and stuff, but have more time to design and come up with you know, presentations that explained better their design um, than normal. Yeah, so those were skills that at the time were super important to be hired in the architecture world.
Is it hard to do this kind of transition from being a student to directly being a teacher? Are they like, is it very complicated to get into such a structure as any university in the UK, or like, do you need to have like, I guess you have to have a higher, like a very high um, results on your exams and things like that, or what is the case?
I think you need to show interest since the start. I was tutoring when I was doing my master. I was tutoring bachelor students, and helping them with their project. So I think you just need to show interest, and then you can create a connection with someone that can give you the opportunity. And I think if you're really eager to do that and you really like it, there is no reason why you shouldn't succeed, right? So, and I think that applies to everything that you do. If you really want something, it is possible. I'm a big believer that everything is achievable if you really want it. So,
And so you started this first few years in the field of education. Was there then afterwards a transition into the, so to say, architectural world on the professional side where you practice?
sure. So after I was teaching at Manchester University, in the meantime, I was applying to a lot of architecture companies that I thought could correspond my values and my eager to do really tall buildings and big projects. And um, a few months later, I was hired by MVRDV in Rotterdam. So that's why I moved there in the first place. And that was my first job as a qualified architect. I started there as a junior, and then I moved on to project leader for competition projects. So I think that that's when I really realized that what I liked about architecture was not just the designing part, but it was also the relationship with the client, the conversation with all the design team, and then translate all the needs of the client and the users into a project that they would like and they would be motivated to, spend time on and finish. So that's really when I started thinking like, okay, um, the part that I like the most is more the leadership part and the business side of things. And that's where it all started for me.
So basically, you did this path between education and really deepening into a skill set of like a designer and so to say software expert. Also, because you mentioned you taught. Are you also very good in Grasshopper and parametric design? Because MVRDV it's quite advanced in that field, so to say.
Yeah, so I personally was responsible for BIM and Revit's side of things, because that's what we were using for the projects that we were doing at the time. Um, and at the time it was also the future because it was the very first time that everyone could collaborate on one model and be aware of each other's mistakes, right? So at the time it was a very good tool to collaborate and shrink the design process timing.
And could you share, like, are there some of the projects that back then you work on that we now can enjoy, or the build, yeah, which project were you
Sure.
working on? That
I mean, I think I've done a lot of competitions when I was there, but I think one that you will know and that is opening very soon is the Boyman Depot in Rotterdam. It's basically a huge um, semi-sphere. The facade is all mirrored. And it's going to
oh
be
yeah.
used to deposit all the art of the Boymans Museum. And inside there is this huge staircase with an atrium that brings you upstairs to a restaurant with a view on Rotterdam, etc. And what is interesting is that when we designed it, we had no idea that you could see such a view from the facade that is mirrored. So because the mirror is slightly arched into a bowl kind of shape, you see the whole landscape of Rotterdam, kilometers and kilometers away. So that's, for me, it's a beautiful project because we didn't necessarily see the outcome straight away, but we discovered like the quality of the space once it got built. So it's not finished yet. I think in September will be the opening. But yeah, that's one of the projects that I enjoyed the most when I was working at NVRD.
Yeah, that's a quite it's a quite famous project. People that follow what is going on in the world of architecture. Was it a competition also, or was it just an assignment from a client?
No, it was a competition because I mean, I arrived just after they won the competition, so I was not in that phase. But yeah, it was, I think, a competition, and yeah, the design went through so many changes, because it was, the dream was there, the idea was there, but then when you have to actually build it, you have to change it in order to make it work. So that was the challenge that I had to go through when I was working there.
So you mentioned before that in this part of your career, you realized that you enjoy very much this communication with the client and this sort of business side of the world, the communication between making some idea into reality. And I'm curious, did you have any? Because I have to communicate with clients too in my daily work because no matter what kind of project you do, you have to turn it from the idea into reality, and sometimes in between there are a lot of challenges because there are also the clients. So often they're developers or people that have built already, so they know where the money in the project are spend, and they want to save, cut, improve, and change design often. So how do you communicate such a crazy idea like having a whole mirrored ball facade? And also, how do you deal with this? How do you know where to push back and where to be more acceptable of the ideas of the client?
I think what is key is storytelling. So I think that the biggest architecture practices that there is in the world, um, their added value is that they're able to convince a client about a crazy design idea because there is a story behind it, right? So communicating the concept through diagrams, through a speech, and really reassuring the client that you will find solutions to make it happen is really key to a successful design wherever you are. And I think that in terms of communication, it's very important to have empathy for the problems that the client encounters, but also have authority in a way where you are still the leader of the design. So you need to find the right balance between understanding truly what are the worries of the client, take it into account, but also show that you can come up with solutions and you're the right person to do the job. And I think that sometimes we're missing this balance in architecture where you either have really empathetic architects that are ready to give away anything for the client to be happy, but then they lose in credibility because they are not the leader, let's say. And then you have the opposite situation where architects are too much of a leader. And then they forget kind of the needs of the client because they just want to do their own design in their own way. So the key is really to be in between these. And I think that collaboration is also key, and delegation is also key for the architects to proceed towards a very successful design, no matter how crazy the idea is, actually.
Yeah, I always thought that because I live in Germany where the clients and the developers are quite conservative, and I always admire the Dutch architecture and Danish architecture because I've been always convinced that the clients are more open-minded and more flexible. Is that the case
Yeah.
for the Netherlands, or is just my external impression?
I think that the Netherlands is really a playing field for the architects, right? There is very little urban rules. There is very little regulations to take into account, especially if we talk about Rotterdam, where there is no real historical building due to the bombarding of the Second World War. So Rotterdam has really been like a trial and error for architects, and the most crazy ideas have taken place there. Same for Denmark. They've been more open to design solutions, very much orientated towards sustainability and reuse of certain materials, etc., etc. So I think that it is definitely a culture where design is welcome, and is welcome because they see it more as a solution to an issue rather than just art, right? And in some places that are more conservative, if you think about Germany, if you think about France, where there is a lot of regulations and you really need to listen to the developer. You have to there is still freedom to design, but I think you have to design within the box that you're given, and that can be, you know um difficult for some, but then it's also important for you to know, okay, what am I good at? Because there are some architects that are extremely good at finding solutions that fit within the box that they're given by the developers. If we think about complexity management, there are some architects that are extremely good at taking all the parameters that they're given and come up with amazing design and solutions that suit the client and the users as well. So it really depends on the type of architect that you want to be, and what are your strengths and your values as well. And then you can pick the type of clients that are most suitable to you, right?
Yeah, that's true. I was talking about that with I was on a podcast. It's called the Spaces podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about exactly that. That maybe it's important for architectures offices to position them as a brand, to say we stand for certain values and design, and we don't sell that. We stand for it, and if the client wants something else, should go to someone else. And yeah, I think this is important.
Absolutely.
And was it that the moment in your career where you decided from MVRDV that you wanted to move in a more business development career, or were there further steps in between?
Well, there was definitely further steps. So when I left MVRDV, I moved to Powerhouse Company, and then I moved to Ecto Hoogstad. So Powerhouse Company, I was in charge of a very big project in The Hague, and still I realized within myself what I was good at and what I didn't like to do as part of the architecture side of things. And Powerhouse was more orientated towards real estate, so it was really, the contact with the client was very close. It was clients that had a lot of money and the desire to be the first innovators as well. So that really brought me to think like, okay, what do I really enjoy doing? And then I moved to Ecto Hoogstad, and I was given the position of business development director for the international side of things of the company, and that's really where I realized that I was really fitted for the job. So my role was to take a company like Ecto Hoogstad, which was really old-fashioned Dutch company that exists since the Second World War, and help them to find projects abroad and build like a department where they can get international projects. And we started with French projects at first, and then it evolved into other countries and other perspective. But that's really when I found out that I was really suited for it and that I loved what I was doing, right? Building network in the locations that we aimed for. Also do part of the networking events, be involved in the PR and marketing team side of things, and also leading the competitions to suit the client and to do the storytelling in order to win the competitions, right? So for me, that was the moment where I really realized what I wanted. And, I think that everybody has to go through it. When you finish university, you're not, the architecture field is so broad. Like, how do you know what you would like? And also a lot of people, they start in practices and they realize that it's maybe not the scene that they expected. So my advice to everyone is to really insist in learning what the things that interest you, the things that you're curious about. Ask your company to put you on the project that you like, or that, or ask them to put you on a task that takes you out of your comfort zone. Because the more you explore in your professional life, the more you will realize quicker what you're good at and what you like, so that you can put it into practice. And that's a little bit my journey that brought me to this point. And I think I'm not done learning, so my role will also shift a little bit in the future as well. Before Corona, the IBD company was focusing on helping architects and engineering companies to find projects abroad. Then Corona hit, and of course, like, we had to shift a little bit our focus. We started having a lot of demands of architects that wanted to start their own company. So we helped a lot of startup architecture practices. Now we have also created a course that is going to come out soon about using social media for your business development. So we are also evolving with what is happening and with the needs of the architecture and real estate field, right? So stop learning, I think.
So I guess from what you said in your story in the background, that you had at the powerhouse company, and then sorry, can you say again what was the second company,
Actor
because I didn't know?
Actor Hochstadt. It's a difficult one. Yeah.
Yeah, the actor host that that you basically your main skill was communication, whether written or direct or drone, because you said that you were also working to create a new network, new connections, also abroad. Uh, when that task was given to you from that company, how did you approach it? So how did you tackle it? Did you start looking for competitions abroad, or did you start to maybe contact local offices and maybe collaborate with them? What was your idea and strategy for that task?
Right. So that's a very interesting question. So at first, I didn't know what I was doing, and neither did my company, because they never did it before, right? So I tested different things, and what I found worked out the best is first to really think about a market that your architecture would be suited to, right? So the specialty of Dutch architects, for instance, is to make some multifunctional spaces. So one space can be used in so many different ways. And that is really something specific to Dutch architecture, for instance. But if you take that out of context in a different country where this is not something that usually architects do, then you have an extra value to put on the table, right? So you really need to find your strength for the right market. So that's number one. Number two is, once you decide which market you want to go in, is to rewrite a little bit your story, because that's also important. What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And how do you go about it in order to solve it? And then number three, it's starting to build awareness in the location of the market that you picked. And awareness is essentially finding a network of people that trust you and like your work and want to collaborate with you. But it's also marketing and PR, like publishing projects in the newspapers or in online websites that are relevant to that location, to start having people talk about you and be familiar with your brand, with your name, with the projects that you have done, and be known by them for your strength. And that's how you start staring a little bit the network in order to have opportunities. So the competitions are great, but once they are published, it's already too late. So you want to go at the source and really find partners, engineering offices, or interior designers that want to pair up with you and that have the knowledge of the local network in order to tell you, okay, a project will come out, so we need to make a team, and this is who we need, etc., etc. Because otherwise, you're always going to be behind schedule. It took MVRDV 10 years to get the first French project. Like, it takes time. You have to be patient. You have to be persistent. You have to build relationships so that you're not just asking for a project to people, but you're also involved to know how they are and what do they need, how can you help them, etc., etc. So it's really building relationships with people is key in order to get the first project. And then once you get the first project, then it gets easier, right? So
Yes, because like I'm also curious, how do you approach these partners after you create awareness, as you said, which is this presence through publishing your works, which is one of the questions. How do you approach newspapers, magazines, and convince them to publish you? And how do you approach also companies abroad? Because I don't know, people, in my opinion, often tend to be skeptical. We get used to it's like being approached by a stranger on the street. I mean, I'm just saying that generally people tend to be first rejective, and then after, it's hard to get into someone heart, so to say. So how did you do these two? Like, how did you approach them? How do you convince newspapers and magazines to publish your work, and how do you approach those local companies without looking sketchy, so to say?
I think that the key is to always think, like, what does the other person win in it, right? So whether it is a newspaper or like an engineering company or another co-architect, think about what do they have to win in our collaboration. So if it's a magazine, and you have an article that is out of the common and quite pertinent, for them it's a win-win situation, because they just get to publish an article that is interesting and that's going to get the readers to be interested in their magazine overall, right? Same for partnerships with local architects or local engineers. What can you bring onto the table that they don't have already, right? Is it a skill, or is it the fact that they want to have projects in the Netherlands afterwards? Is it, you have to find people that want to collaborate because they have something to win in it. And if you forget that part, it just looks like you're just imposing yourself and people are going to be skeptical, right? But you need to find people that have the same value as you. So if you're an architecture practice that, for instance, believes in sustainability, you want to find partners that do believe in sustainability as well. Otherwise, there is no point. But when you can tell them, like, okay, if you add me to the design team, I have these references, or I'm able to bring, a new spark to the design so that your clients see something new. Why would they say no? They have everything to win in it, right? So the key is to think always, and that's for any kind of negotiation or relationship, like, what does the other person have to win in it? Otherwise, it's impossible to convince.
I see. That's a good point. That's a good point to see the things in a different perspective, and to approach collaborators in a different way. But you mentioned your company, which is called IBD, which stands for International Business Development, and instead of being a consultant and an educator in this field, you are an entrepreneur, because this is your company. So I'm curious, when did you come up with the idea, okay, I want to be on this side of the boat and I want to start my company, which won't be the architectural studio company, but will be the architectural consultancy company?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I just think that I knew what I was able to do. I just had to design a job for myself, right? So I knew that I was good at business development, but in the same time, I thought, okay, I can help so many other people. So how do I go about it? Because I didn't want to just switch company one after the other. I was like, maybe I can help multiple architecture practices to do the same thing. And that's where I started thinking, maybe it's better that I start a company that will help practices, but also architects, individual architects, to do business and marketing and learn how to do it in the best way to attract clients and generate business. So I know that is not a typical company because there's not many people that do this, but I think it's very needed and it's very essential. So um, the problem that we saw is that a lot of architects are missing business and marketing skills because they are not taught at university, right? So the easiest way to change this problem is to help people when they are in the professional grounds, right? But now we are also helping in the university side of things. So I'm now a professor of communication and business strategy for the IE in Madrid. And the goal here is to also change the student skills and to give them entrepreneurship and business skills that they can take out when they are in their professional ground and start those companies and be innovative and have a chance to, innovate within the architecture field and bring new projects to light. Very often, there is some amazing architects that just don't know where to start to get clients or how to build a team or how to build a business. And this is what my mission is to change this mentality and to teach them the right tools to do so that how field can evolve, because I think that how field is very old fashioned in a way. We are really behind compared to other fields, and it's essential that we make a move and that we are really responsible for a lot of things on this earth. So we need to give the tools for people that want to innovate to start their businesses and be successful at it. So
And when you sort of wrap your mind around what the idea of your job that you made out for yourself was, basically you found, I guess, a niche, because I don't know how many people are doing your same job. But what was the process from the idea to starting up? Did you directly quit your job and you said, okay, I'm gonna make my leap of faith and put my whole time and workforce into it? Did you have like maybe some savings that you have put aside to afford to sustain yourself in the meanwhile, or was it a lot of people do also the parallel process, which they still keep the uh,
The
daily
job.
job,
Mhm.
yeah, and do the the night work. What was your case in this, yeah, from the drawing board to
So
having a company?
yeah, so basically, Um, when I was working, I had one of my colleagues and also mentor that came up to me. He was leaving the company to start his own thing, and he came to me the last day of his work, and he said to me, "You could start something by yourself, and help more people." And that planted the seed in my mind because I was not seeing it that way, but he saw potential. And I didn't at the time. I didn't even think about being an entrepreneur, right? He planted the seed, and then I had another colleague that, when I spoke about it, was like, "Oh, if you're starting something, I'm your man." So I started the first IBD with two other people, and the business model was very much administrative. So we wanted to take some architecture companies and help them to file our RFPs and to help them to, grow internationally. But it was very much um, documented and very like uh, we were doing most of the work, let's say. And then I took the other two people on board because I thought I could not do it by myself, right? I had this fear of not managing by myself, so I felt more reassured to take two other people on board. Turns out that their vision and my vision of things didn't coincide, right? So we split it from this first company, and it didn't work out. And a few months later, I started all over again by myself this time, um, and this time I could really apply my vision for it. And it started as more of a consultation job, and then it's moved on to really mentoring and teaching people how to do it. So not just executing it, but teaching it. What is the methodology? How do you get there? So we started training teams to it, and partners and founders to business and marketing for the field, and it just went from there. So we had a lot of changes going through. Um, and it was not easy, so when I started with the other two partners, we were working at night, and then when I started by myself, I prepared everything prior to giving my um, before I left my job. I prepared, the website. I started to adjust my LinkedIn profile. All the things that you can do without having a conflict of interest. And then once I felt ready, then I left my job and I started full time. Got my first client within a week, and then it went from there. So if you can prepare as many things as possible before you leave your job, I think that is key to a successful business transition, let's say. But everyone is different. So a lot of the architects that I coach, that are starting their companies now, everyone has their very own story and their very own skills as well. So the transition is always that we put in place for them is always adapted to their needs and the company that they're working on at the moment. So there's different ways. There's no like key way to do it, but this is how IBD started.
Yeah, of course. And this is what is all my idea of the podcast is to show the different careers and the different approaches that people have, and that there is no one way. There are many ways, and no matter the way you start from, you can get anywhere. Just it's an unclear path. But I always
Sure.
like to ask people how they do things, because we get all these articles into media about what, but maybe there is a less than how and why. And I think it's nice to also discover who are the people behind certain companies or designs or brands. And yeah, it's interesting how everybody have their own approach. I'm curious, you said that after roughly a week you got your first client, and I was thinking, what's your experience that you had built up on your daily job to create a whole new network in a different country for a company that's already established in a country, but to go abroad, sort of a little startup into the company? Was that were the skills that you collected there helpful to get you quickly on the right track? Because you have had all the competence in building um, an awareness, as you said, and a whole competence into contacting new people and convincing them or approaching them the right way to jump on a project that's maybe new. And also, yes, you could back up your skills with your background, but still getting a first client, it's not an easy job, because when you're
That's true.
new in a business, nobody has a, it's early adopters are less than the regular people who are skeptical.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that there is two types of branding. So there is the company branding and there is also personal branding. And my personal branding, I've always somehow been good at doing that. And that's what allowed me to create a network. People wanted to do business with me, even though I was representing at the time a company. Um, they wanted to be to do business with me and have a business relationship with me. So even when you leave, you keep these relationships alive, right? So sometimes a lot of people forget that personal branding is key. So even if you are an employee in a company, it is important to take the time to do so and to showcase your values, what you believe in, and what your personal mission is within the field or your profession. And that really allowed me not to start from scratch when I started my company, because I already had people that knew me and people that were aware of what I was doing already for a company. So you know, for anyone that is starting, try to think about did I collaborate with during my career as an employee, and how can I have these conversations with them before I start my own company. And when I started, I asked so many people to have a coffee with me, to ask them like, okay, what do you think? Do you think this is doable? Do you think, is there a mistake in the business model? Is there someone that you know that could help me out? Is there someone that you know that needs my help, etc., etc.? Just ask people for their opinion when you start a business, because that's gonna help you to avoid any type of mistakes, and it can bring you in your first client straight away. So for me, my first client contacted me through LinkedIn, right? Because I was posting all the time. I was showing what I was interested in. I was showing my values, etc., etc. So he just, approached me through LinkedIn. So that's how it happens. It's just, I don't want to say luck because it's not, but it's, if you have a purpose and you create a network according to this purpose, then you are much likely to get your first client straight away, if that makes sense. And that is valid for any type of profession, not just architects or business development. So yeah, I think that's really key.
I can sum up this concept you said with a quote from my grandma, which is, "You work for your luck." So,
Exactly.
so this
Exactly.
is what you did. You were working for your luck. And out of curiosity, was your first client? Because you said you acquired it through LinkedIn, was it a client that was also based in the Netherlands, or was it an international client? Because also LinkedIn, it's a worldwide venue. So,
It was an international client, so it was a French client who worked previously in the Netherlands but was based in France, and he wanted to find projects internationally. So that's how it went. Yeah.
and I'm curious, was the preparation phase also the phase where you set up your methods of your services? Because I'm curious, you said you offer trainings into business development, and when people go and check your website, there are also the some of the companies you collaborated with, and then you mentioned yourself before that since the pandemic hit, and you were working also more with startuppers in the architectural and engineering field. And I was thinking you were working on also with companies like UN Studio, Superworld, and I guess that the approach you're gonna teach at UN Studio, which is already a quite internationally established company, will be completely different than someone that's starting up. So, how did you develop
Sure.
those different methods of approaching your clients?
I think that, even if you're in an international company such as UN Studio and you want to start in a new market, you're starting from scratch because people don't really know you, they don't really know your team, you don't have local references. So it's almost starting like a small startup within a company, right? So my method applies to both people that want to start their own company and that have already a big company but wants to explore a new market. The methodology is very simple and is the steps that I told you before. It's really about uh, figuring out which market is important and then set up, rewrite a story, or if you're a startup, write the story according to the market that you're trying to target. Explain the why, how, what part of things. And then start building a network. So this is really like the points that are important. And then of course it is adapted according to the needs of the client because some people prefer to just do a consultation, some people prefer to train their teams, some people want to have one-to-one mentorship. So it really depends. So then we adapt the service according to how people want to learn or execute the strategy, but the methodology itself is always the same. And it's a combination between, different marketing strategy, business strategies that are applied in any type of field, but that have been tailored to the architecture market more precisely. So it varies, and now we're starting to have a lot of real estate developers as clients, a lot of engineering clients. We've had like architects who have started, virtual reality companies. We have had architects that are starting in fashion. We've had architects from all kind of that want to start any kind of company. So it doesn't need to be specific to architecture. So but we are here to teach them the same methodology that they can apply to any business. So that's, I think, the strength of what we do, is that we can help as many people as possible.
You said that you have tailored, general business development strategies that are applied in every field for architecture. Can you make some examples or some bites of the whole thing? What could be something that you took? Because I'm a big reader of business books and of there are a lot of business books, startup books, and I like to read those, and they have examples, and then you can imagine what it means for your own industry. But what was in your case, what you have, maybe some examples that you have transitioned for the architectural field and design field?
Sure. So if you think about the book Start With Why, right? It's a book where you basically learn how to do storytelling for your clients, right? You have to explain your why, so your motivation for your business, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve for your clients. Then you have the how, which is like, how do you go about it in your unique way to solve this issue? And then you have the what, which is like your credibility, your a presence, and etc., etc. So in order to adapt it to the architect, it's a little bit different than any business, because we sell half of a product and half of a service, actually. So you need to combine a little bit of both. So for architects, you really need to think about exactly what is the issue that the client has, and that he needs an architect for. The how is really like, what type of methodology do you use, or is it maybe a software that you use, or is it any type of solution that you use for your clients to solve this issue. And then the what is your references and your professional background that will motivate clients to give you the key to the project, right? So it's about changing the language so that architects see it from their own perspective. And it's also, architecture is so difficult, because it's not like you can get a client like that and the project is made. It can take years before the client finds the right budget or the right land to do it. And, it just generally takes time. So, that's why we apply these principles to architecture, because it's a little bit different than any field. It's not like you can just sign a contract and then you get to serve the client for a month or for a year. Some projects take between 5 years to 10 years, and there is a lot of things that happen prior to getting the project that are important. Political things, budgets, regulations. A lot of things are happening before you sign for a contract to get a project implemented. So that's how we manage to adapt certain things that have been seen before, but we adapt it for the architect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's quite clear. And I'm curious, when not a lot of people nowadays are fascinated, for example, by starting their own company, because there is also this narrative of the entrepreneur, of the modern, like even recently we had Richard Branson flying into space, we have the Elon Musks, and in the architectural field we have Bjork Ingels, we have the OMA studio. We have a lot of these figures which are sort of superheroes for the people in the industry. And I noticed something, that you have um, option to have a pre conversation with somebody that's starting a business. Is there some case where during these conversations maybe you figure out and suggest these people maybe you're not the right person to start a business? Because yeah, some people just start with this excitement and then maybe they don't realize what is the, because also I think nowadays we have a lot of this marketing which always look makes look everything shiny, but then in the background there is a lot of hard work. So is there some cases where you start consulting somebody that it's willing to start a business and maybe you give this suggestion, or always the clients that have already started a business and then you just go with it?
I think that what is key for me to take someone on board is um, the motivation to do what they're doing. So if people are doing that for money, or if they're doing that, for ego perspective, or because they want to be the next star architect, I think that's not gonna work. I think a successful entrepreneur is someone that wants to serve, is someone that wants to come up with a solution to a problem. So for me, that's key to decide whether that person is suited to start a business or not. So the first step is really we talk about general things like what motivates you, why do you want to to embark in this journey of entrepreneurship. What is the real motivation? And from that, then we're able to um, you know give them the tools and the right mindset to succeed, right? So that's the second step that we're doing. But I think that the key thing is to want to serve and help people and create a better world ahead, because that's a core motivation that no one can take off you. And then, of course, like the journey of entrepreneurship will be up and downs. Everyone knows that. But it's about taking every steps as a challenges and every failure as a learning curve. And that's the mindset that we work on as well with our clients. So
And to go back to your practice and to your company, when I go to your website, the two main programs that I see, it's a digital business development program and a business coaching. Are those two programs, so to say, the side of the same coin? And what are the two main focus on the two programs?
sure. So business coaching is really like any individual that wants to start their own company, or that have started already, but they feel like they don't know enough about business and marketing, and that need some kind of person that is there for them to teach them how to make to get it done, to give them the methodology, to motivate them, get them on the right track to do so. And so it's a very much one-to-one kind of um, interaction where we are at the disposal of the client to help them push through in order to get their first clients and to be installed as a proper company. The digital business development program is more for founders, partners, and business developers who want to basically expand their skills, and really understand what are the technical steps to find a project. So how do you use LinkedIn? How do you use social media to leverage opportunities? How do you pitch? How do you make a successful competition? All these technical things. So we go more in depth than the coaching. We go more into the technical side of things. How many hashtags should you use on LinkedIn, or how do you get yourself on a podcast, and how do you get your article published? Like, we get into the really deep side of things, and you get a qualification from it, so it's an extra on your CV as well, if you want to change company or if you want to be upgraded in your current company. So
Just for information for the people who are trying to get on the Creative Insider podcast, you cannot get. Creative Insider comes to, to you as I did with you, and I found all these people, and it's amazing because I think every time I hear very interesting stories, and I think that I educate myself through this podcast a lot. Um, and I hope I educate also a lot of people that are listening. And you mentioned you created these two main programs. I'm curious, is your then approach more empirical, so to say, so that you learn through practice, or is it that you have yourself then at some point enrolled some business classes, or do you do constant research on further implementing your knowledge? How, or yeah, was it more like the learning by doing, or was it also based on a lot of education or self-education?
so I'm a qualified growth hacker, which means I'm a qualified digital business developer and marketeer. But of course, I'm constantly learning. So I purchase a lot of online courses related to business, related to real estate, related to marketing. And, it's my passion. So luckily, it doesn't feel like work, but I'm always curious about what is out there and how can I help my clients with these tools, right? So I would say a little bit of both, but definitely my qualification has helped me a lot to be more advanced quicker and learn the right tools that were already tested by other people. So I wouldn't have to test myself for a long period of time what works and what doesn't. So I think it gave me the base, and then I became even more professional by seeking other sources of knowledge that are maybe not as formal as they would be usually, if that makes sense.
Yes. And one thing that caught me personally when I was on your website is that you have a podcast yourself, because I'm a big podcast lover, and I have this admiration, and love relationship with all the people that are bringing out podcasts. So, can you share more about your podcast and what can be heard on that platform?
Sure. So the podcast is called the IBD Hub Podcast, and it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and I'm for sure forgetting something. Um, but the goal with the podcast is to bring out a new perspective on the table to innovate the architecture and real estate field. So we have had guests such as Kai from Big Architects. We've had Aaron from ODA New York, but we've also had people that are outside of the field, some specialists about pitching or negotiation or collaboration and so on. And every time we discuss a different topic, we have also talked about the place of women in the field of architecture and real estate, the place of Black people in the field, all controversial in a way topics that are not really spoken about because they're taboo. But the goal with it is to open the eyes of people in the profession, and give them the will to innovate and to change the old-fashioned mindset. So for me, I see it more as a mission because I've gone through a lot of things during my professional and university path, and I've seen a lot of things going on, and I'm trying to push for change and push for changing the mentalities that are, a little bit behind compared to other professions. And so that's the mission with it. um, it's not a monetized podcast. We just do it because we want to address these topics. But yeah, I hope that people will want to check it out, because I think there are some great guests that have so much to teach us and to give. So yeah.
What are some of these changes you advocate for? Well, maybe not all of them, maybe there are a lot, but
Sure.
what are some of your main dream changes in the field of architecture and real estate that you would like to see?
I think that I would like to see more multidisciplinary collaborations. So architects tend to stay between architects, real estate developers tend to stay between the real estate developers. I would like to open people's eyes to see that you can get involved with people from different fields that will bring to the project something new. So, you have a lot of tech startup, prop tech startups, um, artists, social behavior professionals, and so on, that can give so much value to a project. Also, I'm a big believer that we should learn from what we have designed already. So what was successful and what wasn't, and we also, the place of the working environment, is it equal for everyone? Is everyone happy? Or is everyone happy in their own job, and are they managing it well? There's so many topics that are important, because we very often brush it under the carpet, or we don't want to talk about it by fear. And I think that these needs to be addressed. So I feel like, you know, architects have been undervalued a lot in the past decades. And in order to give them a better role and have a bigger impact, because we need their innovation, we need to start from the core issues and bring them up and try to solve them. So, you know, we take different topics every time, and it's very often people that I meet along my way, along my journey as an entrepreneur, and I have these conversation with these people, and I'm like, oh, you should come to the podcast, because I would love for this conversation to be recorded. I would love for people to see your insight or your different perspectives. So, it's not planned, but the goal is to bring up all kind of topics that are so relevant, to bring change.
Yes, I think it's important to talk, and I think also podcasts are a great form for that, because you have these casual conversations, and I think that messages come across better to the audience, because when you go on the classic regular media or formats, it's all more or less scripted. And when you have honest conversation and casual conversation with people, it's there is less chances for coming across like as very very filtered. And is your podcast coming like on a regular base, or is it like sporadic? What is the frequency which you do new episodes?
So we do. It's every week we have a new episode, but we take July off. Right, July is a month where my team and I, we go on holiday. So we will start house season again in August. But each episode take place every week. So if you subscribe to any of the channels, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and you follow the podcast, then you will get notification every time that an episode is out. We record the podcast live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So you can also attend to that. It's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Amsterdam time. And then we just convert it into a podcast that everybody can listen to. And what that does is that when we record it live, we also give the opportunity to people to ask questions and to interact with the guest as well. So you can ask any question that you want to that guest, and we will answer it live. So that gives the opportunity to tailor a little bit the topic to the what the audience wants to listen to, which is great.
And how long are more or less the different episodes, or there is no preset time?
We usually do between 30 to 1 hour episodes, 30 minutes to 1 hour. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be more with some guests. But yeah, it's always interesting to see where the conversation is going. There is no pre-definite format or anything.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through your guest list, and it's pretty impressive. So I think that if the people are giving a try to this podcast, some of the guests have been here too. Some of the guests might be on here too. And I think it's awesome that we, in our design and architecture community, it's starting this network of podcasts and Clubhouse rooms. Because yeah, like this is what happened, for example, in the field of comedians, of stand-up comedians. This is how the Joe Rogan podcast, for example, started. A bunch of comedians started going through the podcast, and the whole thing, the whole topic of stand-up comedy and all their battles got very popular. And I think that with time, when more and more designers start to do that, will have the same, I think, ripple effect. Because if you think about it, design is also present in everyday's life of any individual of planet Earth. So I think it can become can the narrative and the way it's broadcasted can completely shift and give the whole industry a different life. But I'm curious. You said you have now a team. So you started as a one-man show, one woman show. How many are now the team members, and
Oh,
what are they? What do they do in the company?
we're not that many, so we are. I think we are 4 in total. And basically, we have people with marketing background, also people that are in business development, architecture, and we have, copywriters, which are really important. So people that can help to uh, bring the message across through all the social media platforms. And the role of the team is to really help to communicate with as many people as possible, to raise awareness to what we're doing, and really help to go viral, basically, because we're trying to touch as many people as possible. So whether it's through the podcast or whether it's through our services, our company, and so on, we just want to make it loud and to be across all social media platforms, to show that we're here, we exist, this is how we can help, and encourage people to just contact us and go through the journey with us. So yeah, that's really the role of the team. Then for the rest, yeah, it's for some reason, like I don't know why, like it ended up being my face everywhere, which I'm not really proud of. It's just the way it went. We tried different strategies to bring the message across. We tried to be a more corporate brand. We tried to be more of a team brand, but it didn't impact people as much as individual branding for some reason. So now I'm here. So this is how it went.
And I wanna conclude our conversation with one like final question about the practice and about how should people relate to it. Which is I want to focus this on the perspective of start uppers. When you start up, it's not easy, as you know, probably better than I would. But what is the different, like if you can share more about the pricing of these services? Because when you're a startup, every single investment, it's crucial. It can be very painful for a startup to to invest. So
Sure.
what is the point at which it makes more sense to invest, or make it sense? Is it possible to invest beforehand? Is it something affordable to join one of your programs? Yeah,
So yeah, that's a
what
good
makes sense?
question. For business coaching, we made the prices accessible for people that are starting their own company. So not only we made low prices, but we also give the opportunity to create installments for people that are starting, so that they can really start. And what we say to the clients is, you if you want to start and you want to start efficiently without spending a lot of money on other things that maybe fail, or like go onto the wrong path and lose a lot of time, you need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in knowledge in order to start a company. So we try to adapt to the needs of everyone, but we try to give as much value as possible. And what we are sorry about that. For what it is of the digital business development course, as I said, it's more for partners, for people that want to have an extra qualification and so on. So for that, we have a little bit of a higher price because it's more in depth. It's a longer program. So I can't tell you exactly the prices right now, because they're not even displayed on our websites. But it is affordable, and we made it in order to help as many people as possible. And the reason why we don't display things online is just for the fact that we want to make sure that we take on board the right people. Because we need to find people that share the same values, that we think but they have a lot of potential, because there are so many people we can coach actually per month. So we are trying to be selective, not to get lost, and also to get those precious testimonial at the end of it, where people can say, okay, this was worth it, this worked, I have my company now, or I have my business abroad now, and it's working. So that's why we're trying to tailor it according to the people.
Yes, I think yeah, this is another thing that when people would visit will visit your website, can see that there are some testimonials which are your clients, or I don't know, former clients that share their experience. And I think that this message is really powerful, because if people pay for something and they then endorse it, it's legit. So you can say
Yeah,
it like that.
exactly. I
So
mean, we much prefer, I much prefer to spend time on people that believe. I'm not someone that wants to convince anybody. Let's put it that way. So, the ones that come to do the program with us are people that believe in it, and we're not here to, try to convince anybody. And it needs to be people that are positive and that are inspired and that want to, really go through it and succeed, because we don't want to take people on board and be forcing people to do it, because that's not the point.
Well, I can only say it's been great talking to you. Thank you very much for your July time on a different podcast for once. Last but not least, you can now share where people can find more about you online, and we'll put all the links in the description of the podcast.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and it's really amazing the guests that you've had on. So thank you for having me. I'm really, really touched by that. People can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Giulia De Mauro, Giulia De Mauro, Demauro. On both platforms. You can also find me on Clubhouse with the same name. You can find our podcast, the IBD Hub, on different platforms such as YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So, thank you so much, Georgi.
Thank you very much, Giulia. We'll be putting all the links below, so you can just easily click on them and check out the podcast and all the services and the work that Giulia does. And we hope we inspired you to start up. Bye, Giulia. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hey friends, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. You've been amazing. Before we go, I just want to remind you that if you want to support us, you can just go on the creativeinsider.com, where you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, or you can follow us on our social media channels, which are Instagram at TCI Podcast, or the LinkedIn page, The Creative Insider. By doing this, you will have a bigger social media presence, which always looks attractive to more and more important guests. And so this is very fundamental. And if you really love what we do and you want to help us doing a better production, just click on the Patreon link below, where you can support us with the wished amount of money you think it's okay for you. It's a monthly subscription, but you can cancel anytime. So thank you very much and have a good week, guys. Bye.
The whole world stops just like that. Just like that.